Hello, my name is Anama-Green, and my dissertation topic related to the association between preferred teaching styles and perspectives about accommodations for English language learners among P-12 educators in Eastern Kentucky. My problem and background focused more so around how teaching styles of educators might relate to their instruction or accommodations for English language learners. Obviously, English language learners is a topic that's been researched in the United States as a whole continuously throughout the past century and so, but there's not really been a lot of research in this particular region of Appalachia where I live and where I was raised. The research questions that I posed for this project were: how do Eastern Kentucky P-12 educators' belief about the inclusion of English language learners relate to their dominant teaching style? What is the association between perspectives on English language learner coursework modifications and teaching styles among Eastern Kentucky P-12 educators? How do Eastern Kentucky P-12 educators' ELL-related professional development activities relate to their dominant teaching style? And which teaching styles might predict Eastern Kentucky P-12 educators' willingness to modify coursework for ELLs? As an overview of my research study, obviously, teaching ELLs is a nationwide topic, but the teaching styles of educators, there's not really been a lot of studies related to that, especially not in this area. And the research, of course, was based on Gracia's 1996 research that there are essentially 5 styles of teaching, those being the expert style, the formal authority style, personal model style, facilitator, and delegator. Comparing those in a study with their teachers' willingness to provide, or educators' willingness to provide accommodations or modifications for ELLs, was based on the study of Reeves from 2006. Of course, the 2 surveys, instruments from Gracia and also Reeves, were consolidated into one research instrument, and that, of course, had both surveys combined into one. Theoretical framework for my research study was surrounding basically the quality of instruction for English language learners. So my theory was, how could essentially the teacher's teaching style, when related to various other aspects related to PD, to effective instruction, second language acquisition, willingness to modify instruction, and so forth, and inclusion of ELLs, how can that really, what role does that really apply or work together with, per se, to promote that quality of instruction? Is there a connection, is there an association between those two when it comes to teaching styles and accommodations? And, the overarching theme, of course, was quality of instruction for English language learners. The methodology section of my research. Obviously, my research study was designed from a quantitative perspective. There were 2 different survey instruments, just like I mentioned earlier, and a demographics questionnaire. The first instrument was the English as a Second Language students in the mainstream classrooms, a survey of teachers survey by Reeves. And the second instrument was the Teaching Styles Inventory version 3.0 by Gracia. Both of these instruments were combined into a single quantitative instrument in which the Teaching Styles Inventory version 3.0 was presented first, and then the ESL student survey was presented second. So basically, the participants who took the survey did one survey, but it was essentially 2 surveys in one, with the Teaching Styles Inventory first and then the ESL survey second. Then there were demographic questions that include non-personally identifiable information related to participants and their population, and that way variables could be grouped and so forth. As for sampling procedures and data collection, they were invited to take the combined survey by clicking on a link. It was by using Typeform, and before using the actual research questions, they had to do some demographic questions. I used Typeform as a method to collect the survey responses. And what was unique is, as you'll see in the research setting and the participants shortly, I enlisted the help of the cooperatives, regional educational cooperatives in our area, and they shared the survey with the participants. And Basically, the survey was open from about a month, basically, and I had to extend it a little bit due to some limitations and COVID-19, but it more or less lasted a month and a week or so after that. And then I compiled and organized the information, organized the data using Excel, and compiled it into SPSS and so forth. For the participants in the research study was, of course, conducted in the Eastern Kentucky region of Appalachia. Participants were selected with the help of or at least two of the regional educational cooperatives, those being KVEC, Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, and SESC, the Southeast South Central Educational Cooperative. And each of those cooperatives, one of the contact people there in administration, they sent out the survey invitation to their email distribution list of teachers in the area. And basically, those districts sent it out to their staff members and so forth. Just to kind of give you a heads up, SESC has about 27 member school districts, and 21 of those get the PD opportunities there. KVEC has about 22 member school districts in Eastern Kentucky. And also with SESC, they do have about, I think it's 6 or so school districts that receive special ed services through them, but receive their PD and other services through other cooperatives. For example, in Harlan County, we use KVEC for everything but special ed. Excuse me. Here are the results of my study. For research question 1, I rejected the null hypothesis and that there was a relationship. And I accepted the directional hypothesis that an educator's beliefs about inclusion are associated with that. The reason I did that is because the ANOVA analysis for the style of expert were significant. And while there was a significant difference for the expert teaching style, the remaining teaching styles had no other significant differences. However, since that one did show a difference there, I rejected the null hypothesis because at least one of those showed the difference. For research questions 2 through 4, I failed to reject the null hypothesis. For number 2, of course, none of the items were statistically significant, and not a very high correlation, to say it lightly, with the correlational studies. Research question 3 I also rejected because none of the ANOVA analyses were significant at the PO5 level, and while there was a little statistical significance for the delegator and personal model teaching styles, those correlations were very low at 0.17 and 0.7. So basically, there was not really a hard or a strong correlation. For research question 4, the decision was made to reject it, and again, those results were not statistically significant. So overall, the one that was statistically significant was research question 1. So in conclusion, this research study, of course, examined the relationship between an educator's dominant teaching style and the instruction of English language learners, with the exception of research question 1, as I mentioned earlier. None of the results were statistically significant, causing the rejection of the null hypotheses. Research question 1, of course, as mentioned earlier, it examined how an educator's dominant teaching style and their attitudes toward the inclusion of ELLs in their regular classroom settings might have a correlation. And after reviewing those research results and so forth, and comparing those with the research from Grasha and Reeves, it was interesting there. Grasha had some interesting ideas about the expert teaching style, so this had some connections to that as well. When you consider the expert teaching style, there's often a more positive inclusion with ELLs in the classes. So that can obviously be a way to consider future research as well. And given that the facilitator and expert teaching styles did show some connections, future studies could include variables that might focus on these two teaching styles in relationship to the instruction of ELLs. And they could potentially include the two teaching styles and how they could impact instruction for ELLs. And other studies even might include how the two teaching styles relate to an educator's PD choices as well. So I thank you so much for your time and assistance. Again, my name was Anama-Green, and I did the EDD program and Educational Leadership Curriculum Instruction.